you're going to come up and check that APU generator 2 is selected on. Because if you forgot that, for some reason, if they finished loading and you never switched to APU generator 2 and they removed external power, but you just have APU generator 1 on, if you go ahead and put the fuel pumps on, things are going to start shedding. And that's usually a good cue that, something's not right if I see load shedding starting to occur. So the problem could be that you don't have two generation sources. So we want to make sure, as part of the first step of the before start procedure, that we check that APU generator 2 is selected on, which it is. The next thing would be to bring number 4 demand pump to aux, and number 1 demand pump, if you have it, to aux. If you don't have it, then this number 1 would go to auto. And then we're going to bring number 2 to auto and number 3 to auto. So it's aux, auto, auto. Number 4 we do first because that pressurizes the normal brake system first. We don't want to do number 1 first because that could move a shuttle valve, and you could get a slight transfer of hydraulic fluid if you're pressurizing the alternate brakes and the normal brakes aren't pressurized yet. So we always start with number 4. Number 4 to aux, number 1 to aux, number 2 to auto, number 3 to auto. Or it's going to be number 4 to aux, number 1, 2, and 3 to auto if you don't have an aux position for number 1, which some airplanes don't. Mainly on the freighters, they'll have an aux position for system 1. Then we're going to go ahead and turn the fuel pumps on. That'd be the next thing. And we're going to turn on all the pumps containing usable fuel. So we'll turn on these, we'll turn on these, and we'll turn on these. Now I know, because I checked the fuel load before, that 2 and 3 are greater quantities than 1 and 4. So I know that I'm going to turn on the override pumps as well as the main tank pumps. And I know there's nothing in the center tank pump. Now, if I didn't know that or I didn't remember, I could go down to the fuel synoptic and look at it. But in this case, I know that 2 and 3 are greater than 1 and 4 for the quantity of fuel. Nothing's in the center tank. So I'm going to turn on main tanks 1, 2, 3, and 4, and also the overrides 2 and 3. And all the crossfeeds are open. And even if it's tank to engine, I'm still going to do this. And then I'm going to get an ICAS message that says tank to engine, and then I'll configure to tank to engine. But for right now, I'm turning all the pumps on that contain usable fuel. And again, I make sure all the crossfeed valves are open. Center tank, there's nothing in there, so those pumps are left off. Then I'm going to bring the beacon to both. That's about all I do up here. So what did I do so far? APU 2 is on, number 4 to aux, and number 1 to aux, number 2 and 3 to auto. And I brought on all the fuel pumps containing usable fuel, made sure the crossfeeds are open. Nothing's in the center, so those are left off. And then I'm bringing the beacon to both. Now I got to go downstairs. So downstairs, I'm going to now select on the ICAS control panel, I'm going to select recall. And this is kind of a joint responsibility that when I push this, I want the captain to check it as well. So I'll push recall as the FO and I'll say engine 1, 2, 3, 4 shut down. And he'll say check. He's got to look at it and verify it, that those are the only ICAS messages that we have. We shouldn't have any other ICAS messages but that. That's it, just these 4. And then I can push cancel again. So I push this, recall, engine 1, 2, 3, 4 shut down. Captain says check. I cancel them. And then the captain, he doesn't do much. Again, he's going to check the mode control panel just to make sure it's set up again properly, but there's nothing he should have to set. And he's going to set the trim. So we said the trim was 5 units. So you can see I'm setting the trim to 5 units right here. And you notice that is in the green band. That's what we want. I'm also going to check that the rudder trim is 0 and the aileron trim is 0. Now in the AeroWinks, we don't have a control column that we can look at to see that the aileron trim is 0. But on top of the control column, there'd be a scale, and it would show 0 and then units to the right and units to the left. And we want to make sure that says 0, just like this rudder trim says 0. So I'd be checking 5 units that I've set, and 0 for the aileron, but I can't check that in arrow wings. Although it says 0, you can see here it says 0, that it's set 0. That's probably why they have that blue indication there, because you can't really check the control column. And then I'll call for the before start checklist. So let me pull that up. And here's the before start checklist. Okay, so again, I would call before start checklist. And the first officer would get out the QRH, open it up to the checklist, and he'd say before start checklist. Now he's going to skip 109 because we're a freighter. He's going to know we're in a freighter and that we're not 109, which is a passenger airplane. So he's just going to start with passenger signs. And he's going to say passenger signs are on, and he responds to that because that's his area of responsibility. I don't have to say anything as the captain. So he'll say passenger signs on, MCP. And now that's the challenge, and he's waiting for a response. So I, as the captain, will say V2 158, heading 135, altitude 6,000. And he doesn't have to repeat that because this is my area of responsibility. It's not his. So I respond to it, he doesn't. Then the first officer will say takeoff speeds. And I will say, as the captain, V1 127, VR 139, V2 158. And then the first officer is going to repeat that, but he's looking at his CDU because we want to make sure these agree, because this is calculated by the left FMC, this is calculated by the right FMC. So we want to make sure they agree. So he would say V1 127, VR 139, V2 158. So that's a dual response. Okay, you Patreon guys have the checklist anyway, so let me start this all over again. So on the before start, the FO is going to say passenger signs on, because that's his area of responsibility. He'll say MCP, and then I'm going to respond as the captain, and now you can see this. V2 158, heading 135, altitude 6,000. And that's all captain says. FO doesn't reply to that because that's his area of responsibility. And then the first officer would say takeoff speeds. And I would look at my CDU and say V1 127, VR 139, V2 158. And then the FO is going to look at his side and say V1 127, VR 139, V2 158. Because that's both our area of responsibilities is to check the V speeds in the CDU. Then he's going to say, the first officer is going to say CDU pre-flight. And the captain is going to say completed, and the first officer is going to say completed. It's a dual response because you completed yours and he completed his. So it's a dual response. So CDU pre-flight, completed, completed. Trim, that's just the captain response now. So he's going to say 5.0 units, 0, and 0. And he'll look at the control column, not here. But he'll look at the control column and see that it's 0. Taxi and takeoff briefing, completed. Whoever did it would say completed. Beacon, both. That would be the FO saying the challenge and the response, because that's his area of responsibility. And then he would say before start checklist complete. That's the way it would be done by Boeing, but when we do it from here on out, it'll be the way that it'll be just be challenge and response, because we'll be using Mr. Sylvan on the next period. First Officer Sylvan. Okay, and then we're ready, basically ready for engine start.